BillO'Reilly.com Premier members, welcome to the No Spin News, Wednesday, December 11th, 2019, 2 weeks before Christmas. I hope you're all getting ready. And a very important news day, fight for your freedom in that regard. So I was on Hannity's radio program today. We posted it on BillO'Reilly.com. And, you know, Sean has a tendency to get in the weeds on this stuff, on the Horowitz hearing, on the impeachment, all this. And I kind of float above the weeds, as I told you, because I know there's a segment of the population very, very interested in all the micro details. And Hannity has been right, and I told him that. I told him that on the radio program today, that above all the others that I follow on TV and radio, he's been the most correct about the things that have come down since Donald Trump assumed office in 2017. Now, today, I started off with Hannity by saying, look, I'm going to give you a rundown of who had a bad day today. All right? Who had, you know, because let's just get away from the minutia and the bigger picture. Who had a bad day? The Democratic Party had a very bad day. Because anyone following this, and believe me, most people are not. They're not watching Michael Horowitz testify in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. They're not watching, all right? But if you are watching it, you see clearly that the FBI tried to undermine the Trump campaign and presidency. There is no question about it. They did that, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Now, was there somebody hired ordering that? I don't know. But I do know the FBI, to its everlasting blemish, I'm not going to say disgrace because the agency is a good agency, but Comey and McCabe, and we'll get to that, they tried to undermine the Trump campaign and the Trump presidency. There's no question about it. So it was a bad day for the Democratic Party and a bad day for the FBI. The Democratic Party loses all momentum as far as portraying Donald Trump as a corrupt schemer. Because now the scheme was on the FBI side, and the Democratic Party bought into that, as did the media. So the second big loser today, bad day for Comcast NBC News. NBC News today ceased being a news organization. So when the Horowitz hearing opened up, Fox News took it, all right, but not MSNBC or CNN. They didn't take the opening statement by Republican Chairman Lindsey Graham. Blacked it out. However, once Dianne Feinstein came on, the ranking minority member of the Judiciary Committee, MSNBC put her on. That's the end of NBC being a news organization in America. If you choose to watch them or the Today Show or any of their properties, know you're not watching news that is designed to inform you. They don't want to inform you. All right? If they did, they would have put on Lindsey Graham from the beginning and then taken Ms. Feinstein, as Fox News did. The networks didn't cover it. Okay. CNN didn't take Lindsey Graham, but they didn't take Feinstein either. They started when Horowitz himself was being questioned by Senator Graham. So, Comcast NBC News, bye. Forever. Can't come back. All right? They're not a news organization any longer. John Chancellor, Huntley Brinkley, it's over. It's over. And there's no way you justify that. You can't make an excuse. They just put blatant partisans over there. That's what they want to be. That's how they make money. Now, I tweeted at 10:38, CNN and MSNBC refused to run Senator Lindsey Graham's opening statement in the Horowitz hearing. Most blatant form of media bias I have ever seen, RIP American journalism. More than 45 years in journalism business, never seen anything that bad. All right, at 10:58, I tweeted, MSNBC blacked out Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, but is now broadcasting Democrat Dianne Feinstein in the Horowitz hearing. It's all over. And at 11:20, I said, excuse me, if you believe Michael Horowitz's sworn testimony, the FBI leadership committed fraud on the federal FISA court, a felony. And that gets me to the last portion of the bad day. Then I'm going to run you 4 sound bites, and then we're going to bring in Brett Tomlin. Bad day for James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page. Okay? Comey, director of the FBI. McCabe is assistant. Peter Strzok, the head investigator on Russian collusion. Lisa Page, his mistress and the top lawyer for McCabe. I would be stunned if all 4 of them are not charged with crimes after John Durham brings back his report to the Justice Department in the spring. I think all 4 will be charged with felony. All right? They presented false evidence to FISA court judges. They knew it was false by omission or commission. Durham will prove it, and they'll be indicted. If they're not, I'll be stunned. All 4. Now, Lisa Page is suing the FBI and Department of Justice for releasing her tweets that show how biased she is against Donald Trump. She'll lose, but she's suing. Final thing. Hannity and all the others that I heard said good things about Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General. I demur. And I told Hannity that. I said, I don't think he served the nation well, Mr. Horowitz. He did his job in the sense that he compiled the 17 mistakes that the FBI committed in the pursuit of the FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. He did that. But then he failed to draw any conclusions and even said, in a very disingenuous way, well, we didn't really find any direct evidence of bias. That means that nobody said they were biased, or he didn't have a document that said we're biased against Donald Trump. But Horowitz knows, as we all do, that the FBI could not have made 17 honest mistakes in the pursuit of 3 FISA warrants to spy on the Trump campaign. Impossible. The things they said were so blatantly wrong that McCabe and Comey, overseeing this, and Peter Strzok, the lead investigator on it, had to know if they can read. All right? So Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, knows that bias was present, but will not say it. That does not serve the nation. He can say, I filed my report, I didn't put it in my report because nobody told me that directly and I didn't get any note or it said that written down, but I, as a seasoned investigator for the Justice Department of the United States, can only conclude that these mistakes were done intentionally. And indeed, one application for a FISA warrant was fraudulently written. That the truth was put out of it and the falsehood was put into it. That FBI agent, I forget his name, will be indicted. That's the one that Horowitz referred over to Durham for indictment. So you'll have maybe 5, 6 people indicted. But Horowitz, I believe, did not serve his country well by dodging that bias issue. And indeed, Dianne Feinstein seized upon that. And we're going to play her soundbite. We have 4 soundbites. The first one is Lindsey Graham's opening statement. If you had been tuned into CNN or MSNBC, you missed it. Here it is.
Struck, the frontline supervisor. February 12, 2016. Oh, he's, Trump, abysmal. I keep hoping the charade will end and people will just dump him. March 16, 2016. I cannot believe Donald Trump is likely to be actual serious candidate for president. July 16th, we're getting closer to when this thing opens. And wow, Donald Trump is an enormous douche. Again, a lot of people agree with that. The whole thing is like living in a bad dream. July the 19th, 2016. Trump is a disaster. I have no idea how destabilizing his presidency would be. A lot of people believe that. You're entitled to believe that, but you should not be an investigator. August 8, 2016. 3 days before Strzok was named the frontline supervisor. He's not ever going to become president, right? Page to Strzok. Strzok, no, he won't. We'll stop it. These are the people in charge.
And that's enough. Right there. That's your bias. Right there. That's your corruption. Right there. Peter Strzok, supervising investigator. Shocking. Horowitz knew it. Horowitz saw it. Horowitz should have said it. Now, why? Why would the FBI compromise its integrity to do all this? Lindsey Graham again. Go.
Everybody wants to know, was there any bias here? What motivated these people? Why do you think they kept going? Maybe because they were on a mission, not to protect Trump, but to protect us from Trump. That's what they were trying to protect, all of us smelly people from Donald Trump. That's what this is about. Whether you believe it or not, I believe it. And you know what? It could happen to y'all next time. There's some pretty passionate people on our side that I wouldn't want to be investigating any of you.
All right, so that's what Lindsey Graham says was a motivation. Now, Horowitz himself was a little bit befuddled in his opening statement, couldn't really get it out. But there was some clarity, and I've got that soundbite for you. Roll it.
Although we did not find documentary or testimonial evidence of intentional misconduct, we also did not receive satisfactory explanations for any of the errors or omissions we identified. We found, and as we outline here, are deeply concerned that so many basic and fundamental errors were made by 3 separate handpicked investigative teams on one of the most sensitive FBI investigations after the matter had been briefed to the highest levels within the FBI, even though the information sought through the use of FISA authority related so closely to an ongoing presidential campaign, and even though those involved with the investigation knew that their actions would likely be subjected to close scrutiny. The circumstances reflect a failure, as we outline in the report, not just by those who prepared the applications, but also by the managers and supervisors in the Crossfire Hurricane chain of command, including FBI senior officials who were briefed as the investigation progressed.
And so unless they all are as incompetent as the Keystone Cops and Inspector Clouseau, it had to be done on purpose. And that's what Horowitz should have said. Finally, Dianne Feinstein doesn't want to know the truth, doesn't care about the truth. Here's what she said. Go.
This was not a politically motivated investigation. There is no deep state. Simply put, the FBI investigation was motivated by facts, not bias.
All right, I'll just let you do. I can't even comment any further on that. So let's bring in Brett Tallman. He's in Salt Lake City, former U.S. Attorney for Utah, and he's our go-to guy on all of these matters. So your assessment of Michael Horowitz today?
I think today was a better day for purposes of understanding the gravity of what he found. Why doesn't he lead out, though, Bill, with, I've found significant abuse that rises to an egregious level of the surveillance, our most important court? Instead, he leads out with this, I couldn't confirm that the investigation was launched because of any bias. That's not what that report ultimately says, and so we got a taste of the gravity of the issues that he uncovered.
They argued about the opening of the Russian investigation. I have no beef with that, by the way. George Papadopoulos had a conversation in a London, England bar with an Australian guy who was working for, I guess, Australian intelligence. He reported the conversation back. Australian intelligence reported it to the FBI. The FBI opened an investigation. That's okay with me. So far, I don't have beef with that. But then, when the political dossier against Trump came in, and the FBI knew it was paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC, that's where the whole thing fell apart, correct?
Yeah, and even before that, on the undercovers tape, so you have this informant who's a human intelligence informant officer who's working basically for the FBI.
You're talking
He's
about
got
Robert Page?
I'm talking about the unidentified friendly that went in and listened to Papadopoulos, had a wire on him. So he's in there. And Papadopoulos says, I don't want anything to do with the Russians. We don't want anything to do with the Russians. That would be treason. That part doesn't get included in the FISA. Right. That right there tells you that at the very highest level, they knew that he had said that. At that moment, your investigation or your theory that Russia is infiltrated the campaign is blown out of the water. How do you go forward then, approach the court for that?
You leaped ahead of me a little bit. So the initial investigation by the FBI, I think, was warranted to look into rumors because you had all kinds of leaks coming out about the DNC and people hacking and all that. But once it got into the informational, where they had an undercover and they knew that Carter Page and Papadopoulos and everybody else weren't colluding, they still went ahead on a phony information basis to try to get more surveillance. All right, now, when it comes to Comey and McCabe and Peter Strzok, they were the big three in charge of this. As I said, this is the most important FBI investigation since the attack on 9/11. So they had to know every step of the way what was happening, correct?
Absolutely. It is the only area that requires the director of the FBI to approve it.
So my contention is, because all that is true, and because 17 mistakes have been documented in 3 FISA warrants for surveillance, that Comey and McCabe will most likely be charged with a felony of presenting false evidence to get a wiretap.
I think that John Durham right now has information that is more than just Kevin Kleinsmith, who was the one who altered the information. It's more than him. He has information. He has to have information that it goes up a lot higher. And I deduce that because of his press statement. You would not have indicated and put the brakes on the narrative on Horowitz if you had just Kleinsmith.
And why would Kleinsmith do that and put his whole career at risk? I mean, we'd have to ask him, of course. But the Democrats made a big deal out of Durham and Barr contradicting Michael Horowitz. And they asked Horowitz on a number of occasions, did Barr sign off on your... And to his credit, Horowitz said, no, he had problems with it. But at this juncture, I don't know how much Barr and Durham would tell Horowitz after this thing was written up. Do you have any idea?
They wouldn't tell him much. And you're keying on the right thing. When I listened to Barr, and I went back and listened to several of his statements, he draws a very unique distinction. He says, Horowitz did not say there's no bias, or this wasn't out of bias. He said, they told me they weren't biased and I couldn't find any evidence to contradict it. But John Durham is looking at a bigger investigation. And then Horowitz today said what John Durham is looking at is broader than what I was able to look at.
Well, I think I'm the only one in the country who feels that way, but I think Horowitz is a bit of a weasel. He's a bit of a weasel for not saying, look, I mean, I compiled all his facts. I didn't have anybody confessing to be biased. But as my experience tells me, this kind of gross incompetence never happens at the FBI. It has to be a contrived situation based on wanting to get Donald Trump. I mean, I actually... anything wrong with him saying that?
No, nothing wrong. And in fact, that still is factual. If he had said, it strains credibility to suggest that this was anything other than bias.
Yeah, I mean, come on. He can read Peter Strzok's text to Lisa Page. Final question, and I want to reiterate this because it's important. Durham is going to issue a report probably in the spring. Would you say that's timeline before the conventions, before the political conventions? Would you say that's realistic?
It's possible, and keep in mind, he doesn't have to issue a report unless Barr has asked him to put together a report, which I understand may have happened. I think his first focus is, what am I going to present to the grand jury? And he's going to take whatever time it takes to make sure that he presents and then gets his indictments, and then you'll later see a report. So I think it could take a long time.
If it does take a long time, then we're into the presidential election with still a lot of fog hanging around President Trump's first term. That doesn't seem to be the best case scenario for the nation and for the voter. We should know with clarity what happened in Donald Trump's first term.
I agree with that, absolutely. It's tragic that we don't. If at the very least, hopefully, if indictments do come down, it paints a picture that gives us a perspective before then.
Voters need to know. All right,
They
Bill,
need to
as
know.
always, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
We'll talk to you soon. I'm going to run
Will do.
down now a series of stories very quickly because we spent obviously